Hello friends and welcome back. So I tried to film this video once before. It did not work out. It did not happen for me. And that's because I am kind of nitpicky with everything, and the dog was barking. A dog. The dog. I hate this dog. So I'm trying again today since I'm on holiday break finally. But the thing is, it's been hella windy lately, so you're gonna hear a lot of anyway. So I asked you guys in my last video if you wanted to see a get ready with me makeup / true crime case. I've been a huge fan of these for over a year now. First one that I saw being done was actually by Bailey Sarian. If you don't follow Bailey Sarian, I don't know what you're doing with your life. You should go follow her because she's amazing. And I would love to be her friend. Hey Bailey, would you be my friend? I also follow a lot of other true crime YouTubers like Kendall Ray and also Stephanie Harlow, and I watched Bella Fury for like 2 years before she kind of stopped making videos altogether. Georgia Marie's really good as well. Just a whole bunch, and they started becoming more popular, which is something that I really love because I'm that weirdo that likes true crime. I don't know. And it's really strange to me because no one else in my group of friends or my family or my husband even likes true crime. So I feel like the only way I can really talk to people or like get my little fixins is by YouTube. I like to sit and watch these videos with a nice hot cup of cappuccino, just sit there with my blankets and just curl up and listen to really horrible stories. They're very bad. I find the psychology behind some of these people fascinating, and I don't know. I don't know. You guys know that I have an ASMR channel, so that's my main baby. I've grown that to be my everything, and I thought I would sit down and get ready for a video that I'm about to film on that channel while telling you this true crime story that not very many people have covered. I'm pretty sure Georgia Marie has covered it, but I want to kind of tell you a bit more about it. Let's tell you a little bit more. You like this stuff, so you're fine. If you are new here, do let me know what kind of cases you want covered next. This channel is not monetized at all in any way as of this video that I'm posting right now. So this is all just mainly for fun. I don't know. Is it like awkward and like kind of sick that I'm doing this for fun? I don't know. I have to kind of think about my life choices, don't I? Anyway. So let's just hop right into it before I start. So this is the Yara Gambirasio case. Don't mind if I like look down here because I have my mirrors. So Yara Gambirasio was a 13-year-old girl from Brembate di Sopra. You're probably going to be kind of shocked because it sounds like a film. In fact, you're probably going to comment down below, Ella, are you kidding me? Did this actually happen? Because this sounds like a made-up story. But it's true, 100% true, and it's incredible what technology can do. That's all I'm gonna spoil. Yara Gambirasio was a 13-year-old girl from Brembate di Sopra in Italy. By the way, I am Italian and I live in Italy, and I've heard this case being mentioned before by family and friends, and I got really curious about it, so I started researching and I watched documentaries both in English and in Italian, so I've got double the info here. So she's from Brembate di Sopra, and it's on an island called the Bergamasque Island, which is between the river Brembo and the river Adda. It's just an hour north of Milan and just south of the Bergamo Alps. And it has a population of just over 8,000 people. So it's a really small town. So when this happened, you can imagine that people were freaking out because nothing like this ever happens in tiny towns, ever. I live in a tiny town in Italy, and I can tell you now that if something like this were to have happened, the entire town would have gone crazy. So I can just imagine. She was a middle child of 4 children with 1 older sister and 2 younger brothers, and she was heavily involved in gymnastics. I mean, this girl's whole life revolved around gymnastics, and that's all she did. And pretty much gymnastics was kind of her downfall if you think about it. Do you guys hear this? This is crazy. Crazy weather we're having. Holy crap. Well, this channel's not even monetized. I can say crap. Crap. On November 26th, 2010, at around 5:15, Yara left to go to a local gym, her local gym, which was only a short distance away from her home. So by 7 o'clock, and she still hadn't returned home, her parents began to get extremely worried because she was only meant to drop off a stereo. I think it was a stereo. And so that wouldn't have taken over 2 hours. At 7:11, Yara's mom, Maura, called her, but it went straight to voicemail. And 20 minutes later, her freaking flies everywhere. Her father, Fulvio, called the police, and the call went straight through directly to the public prosecutor's office, which was in Bergamo. And the chief inspector or investigator or magistrate on the case was this former police officer that had been an investigator for over almost 15 years, and her name was Letizia Ruggeri, and you have to remember her name because she is golden. Golden woman. Okay, you guys, I'm breaking out a new tube of concealer. Ooh, this is going to be so satisfying. Let's bring some ASMR into this channel as well, why not? So here in Italy, we have both state police officers and military police officers, which are called the carabinieri. And she called both for this case. She knew something was up right away. When they arrived in Brembante di Sopra to investigate, Yara's gym teacher or gym instructor confirmed that she had seen Yara, and she was only there for a short while, and she did some very light working out before leaving. So she was there and she left by herself. The police found out that the last text message that Yara had sent was to her friend Martina around 6:44 p.m. saying that she'd meet her at 8 a.m. the following Sunday. And that was the last text message she'd sent. And investigators thought it would be really, really strange if she'd had, run away or something. This doesn't seem like a runaway case. She had plans to meet with her friends the next Sunday. And also, she was just not the kind of girl to run away. She had a happy life. Investigators, interrogated her parents, and her life was just fine. Like, nothing was off, nothing was wrong. She was a very normal girl, and she would not have run away, and that was pretty evident and obvious to everybody straight off the bat. So Letizia Ruggeri then called in this team with tracker dogs, and had them trace Yara's scent from the gym. And they thought that her scent would have at least gone forward towards her house. And maybe she had gotten snatched on her way walking towards the house. We don't know. You know, anything could have happened. But instead, the dog started walking the opposite direction towards this tiny town called Mappello. And phone records showed that her phone was active in Mappello around 6:49 p.m. that evening. So Yara was in Mappello, or at least her phone was. So Ruggeri put wiretaps on hundreds of phones in Mappello. There was this one guy, a Moroccan man called Mohamed Fikri, whose phone had been tapped, and he was caught saying the phrase, "Forgive me, God, but I didn't kill her," or something like that, which had been translated by investigators. But by the time police put all of that together, he was already on a boat on his way to Tangier. See, he was working as a builder in Mappello, and then he left maybe to go for another job, we don't know. All we know is that the police intercepted the boat, and when they searched the van he had been using for his job as a builder, they discovered that it contained a blood-stained mattress. And Letizia said, and quote, "People liked him as a guilty party because he was foreign." I don't know how much you guys know about Italians and Italian politics and stuff like that, but I can tell you there are a lot of good Italians, okay? But there are also a lot of racist people here. Hella racist. I'm just not used to that much, coming from Canada, where like you're basically taught to respect everyone, and you know, there's no such thing as dang immigrants coming here to steal our jobs, because everyone's an immigrant in Canada. So but anyway, it was discovered in the end that the phrase had been mistranslated, and the blood sample was ruled out because it didn't match. So as the investigation continued, Yara's parents were constantly bombarded by news reporters and TV news camera people, etc., at all hours of the day. There was not a minute that these people had a moment to themselves. But the thing that got me was that they didn't want to do any news like outreach or use any news platforms to, you know, ask for Yara's safe return. Nothing, absolutely nothing, which is kind of strange to me. I don't know. Anyway, these people wanted just some peace and quiet, and it disrupted their really low-key lifestyle. Northern Italy is really different from southern Italy. I'm from the south, and I can tell you right now, I can attest to this. The province of Bergamo is actually much closer to Switzerland, so there are a lot of cultural differences. For example, where many people in the south would probably try to get as much exposure as possible, like the day their child goes missing, people from Bergamo are generally like more reserved. I don't know how to explain that. Like they're just more, they keep to themselves, and until they know so that something is for sure, you know, certain, they won't go out of their way to, you know, bring attention to something if they're not quite sure that it's 100% legit. Whereas Southerners are more like, oh my god, my child's missing, someone's gotten her and like kidnapped her, oh my god, blah, blah, blah. Like they'll go crazy even before it's 100% certain that their child has been kidnapped. And then their kid might come home and they'll be like, oh, it's fine, you know, okay. So Southerners are more like, The people who cry wolf. I don't know how to explain it. I live here, so I know. I feel bad. I feel like I'm exposing my whole culture right now. So anyway, Yara's parents only shared a few photographs of Yara with the press a day after her disappearance, but they waited until after Christmas to make a televised appeal, like a national appeal for anyone who had any information. I don't know about you, but if my daughter were missing, I wouldn't wait months after she's disappeared to get her face out there. We all know that the first few days after someone's gone missing are like critical. So I don't know who advised them to do that, or if that was of their own will or out of their own heads, but that was just no bueno. That was just not it, darling. Don't do that. No. Okay, so let's skip forward exactly 3 months after Yara disappeared. On the 26th of February 2011, a man named Ilario Scotti was testing out his new radio-controlled airplane in a small town called Cignolo d'Isola, just 10 kilometers south of Brembate di Sopra. The plane wasn't functioning very well, so he had to land it. Like, he wasn't supposed to land it, but he just was like, yeah, I'm just gonna land it right here in these bushes and check it out, see what's happening, and fix it and be on my way. Steady on my way. Hey, steady on my way. So he brought this plane down in a field with really, really high weeds. And when he picked up the plane, he noticed that on the floor, like on the ground, there were some rags, just some pieces of cloth. And he was about to leave and just disregard all of that completely. But then he saw a pair of shoes. And that's when he called the police. So Ruggeri got a call about the crime scene as she was coming back from a skiing trip with her daughter, and she went straight over there. The body was in an advanced state of decomposition, but Ruggeri could see the black bomber jacket that matched the description of what Yara had been wearing the day that she disappeared. And then she also had on her Hello Kitty shirt, and crime scene investigators also found her iPod, house keys, and her SIM card and phone battery, but her phone was nowhere. Yara had not been sexually assaulted, though. In case you are wondering. Interestingly, only her bra was unhooked, but she had suffered multiple injuries from a sharp weapon which had pierced her clothing in several places, and she had just been attacked and then abandoned. Like, it seemed as though there was no rhyme or reason as to why this happened. It just seemed like someone had picked her up or lured her away from the gym that she was supposed to drop off that stereo at, and then they took her to Mappello and then brought her down to Cignolo d'Isola to just stab her and leave her there. You know, it was just kind of weird. It was weird. So yeah, she was just attacked and abandoned, and she died from exposure to the elements. Zoomed you guys in a little bit so you could see what I'm gonna do with my eyeballs, but not like you really care that much, do you? No. The forensics team received 2 DNA samples, one from Yara's phone battery and the other from 2 fingers of her gloves, but neither of these matched any samples the authorities had on record. So 2 months went by, and in April, the commander of the Scientific Investigations Department in Parma phoned Letizia Ruggeri, the chief investigator, about DNA found on Yara's underwear. It had been suggested that the murderer himself had been injured during the struggle and was actually hurt in all of this and left his DNA behind. This is when we start talking about the investigation because it was huge. Huge. It was one of the most costly in Italian history. I mean, ever. Basically, investigators set up this incognito task force to find Yara's killer based on this one DNA sample. And they cross-referenced everyone's cell phone that had been in motion or moved from Brembate di Sopra to Cignolo d'Isola, and each phone was tracked down and asked for a DNA sample, because one of these people that had moved from Brembate di Sopra to Cignolo d'Isola had to have been the killer, because by May of 2011, after Yara's funeral, investigators had thousands of DNA samples, but still no leads whatsoever. But Ruggeri was a smart cookie. She had this gut feeling about this one pub with a bad reputation, and honestly, I don't know how. But, you know, I feel like whenever you have these gut feelings, you need to do what the gut tells you to do. Do you know what I mean? You trust your gut. Always trust your gut. So this pub was called Sabbie Mobili, aka Quicksand. It was very close to the grounds where Yara's body had been found. And the club actually required memberships in order to get in, so it was very easy for investigators to find out who had been in the area and who had been in the area specifically on the day of Yara's supposed alleged murder. So this is when we finally get our big break in the case, because one of the samples from the pub was shockingly similar to the suspected murderers. The man who had given this DNA sample was called Damiano Guarinoni, but he was quickly taken off the suspect list because he had been in South America the day that Yara disappeared, so it couldn't have been him that snatched her. However, geneticists were convinced that he was a close relative of the murderer. When I read this, this didn't come as such a shock to me because honestly, when you live in such a small town, literally everyone is related to everyone else. So that he was a close relative was not that shocking to me, to be quite honest with you. But Damiano Guarinoni's mother, Aurora Zanni, used to work for Yara's parents as a housekeeper, which everyone thought was a highly suspect. But in the end, it was just a coincidence, and well, I assume so, because it's still a tiny town, and everyone knows one another, so I don't know. But it was still weird, no? I feel like it was weird. People were criticizing Letizia Ruggeri's investigation process because it had been a year and they'd only gotten so far in the case. Also, people were being sexist jerks because they were saying there's no way a woman would be able to solve the case, and also she was a single mom and blah blah blah. I mean, what does that have to do with anything? If someone's competent or not, oh, she's a single mom. Seriously? Whatever. Anyway, they ended up tracing Damiano Guarinoni's family history to see if there was anyone who had an even to see if anyone had an even more similar match to the DNA found on Yara. And he and his father were ruled out, but they had found out that his brother Giuseppe, who had died in 1999, left behind a widow in a small village called Gorno. After he died, she became a Jehovah's Witness and moved to a town called Clusone. So when investigators went to go visit her, they found and took DNA from postage stamps that Giuseppe had licked before he died, obviously, to get a sample of his DNA. And it was incredible because they found out that Giuseppe had been the murderer's father. His daddy. I am your father. DNA had proven that he was the murderer's father. Isn't that just the weirdest thing? I swear, science just blows my mind, man. My mind was blown. So, they had 3 children, Giuseppe and his wife, who was named Laura, by the way, a girl and 2 boys. And since the murderer was male, obviously because they took the DNA and they knew it was male, they just decided to extract DNA only from the 2 sons, Pier Paolo and Diego, were their names. But both of them were excluded. So if you guys are, keeping up with all of this, do you know what that means, right? Because if Giuseppe was in fact 100% the murderer's father, and that was a fact, that means that somewhere out there in the world, this guy had fathered a son. So Giuseppe had been a bus driver when he was alive, and investigators discovered that he would travel to a spa resort for 2 weeks every May from the early 1960s onwards. Ruggeri's team actually searched through records of all women who had stayed at the spa the same time that he was at the spa and cross-referenced to see if any of them had stayed at the same time, if there was an overlap throughout the years, like if there was one specific woman that had been staying there the exact same time that he had been staying there when he was going to the spa every year. At the same time, Yara's parents had actually hired their own private geneticist who had acquired permission to exhume Giuseppe Guarinoni's body from the cemetery back in Gorno, and when they tested it, it absolutely, without a doubt, confirmed that Giuseppe had been the murderer's father, 100%. So this little guy was out here getting busy back when he was alive. Oh boy. Oh boy. So investigators actually ended up tracing one of Giuseppe's co-workers from back when he was a bus driver. And this co-worker confessed that Giuseppe, when he was alive, used to be a ladies' man. He wouldn't have put it past him to have had many affairs throughout the years. That's what he said. In June 2014, they finally found a name, and she was called Esther Arzuffi. Arzuffi? Apparently, she was outgoing, wore skirts, dyed her hair, and she was very out there for the 60s in Italy. She had a job at the textile factory and took the bus every day. When they cross-checked the DNA samples taken back in July of 2012, they found that there had been an error made by one of the geneticists in Rome. Esther's DNA wasn't compared to the murders. Yara's DNA had been compared to the murders, so obviously there was no match between them. So of course it came back negative. And they finally found the missing piece of the puzzle. They matched Esther's DNA to the murder, and they finally found the missing piece of the puzzle. They found out the murderer's mother. So Esther had given birth to twins back in 1970, a boy and a girl. The boy was called Massimo, middle name Giuseppe, like his dad, Bossetti. At the time, he was 42 years old. He was a builder, married, and had 3 children. And he was living in... Do you want to guess where he was living? This guy, Massimo? He was living in Mapello. Do you remember where Yara's phone last pinged when she disappeared? On June 16th, 2014, Massimo Bossetti was arrested and charged with the murder of Yara Gambirasio. Investigators found tons of circumstantial evidence. Apparently, Bossetti frequently hung around Yara's house. He used to park his car behind her gym and ate in a pizzeria down her street often. His internet searches were also very iffy. They showed a compulsion for underage prepubescent girls. So that's always fun. Alright, let me quickly go put on some lashes and then I'll be right back to finish up with the rest of the case. I'm back. So let's end this story right here. Bossetti maintains his innocence to this day. He says he never touched Yara. He's never even seen Yara, met Yara. He's never even been on the same planet as Yara, apparently. And he says he never touched her, so let alone kill her. Esther Arzuffi, his mom, still denies that she's ever been unfaithful to her husband. So maybe lying runs in the family or something. It's possible. I don't know about this one, you guys. There was a whole bunch of other information, like on his life story and his upbringing and whatever, but I felt like this one had to be more focused on the case because I think that the way that they solved this case was just mind-boggling. Because if you think about it, it's just so... like, without technology, this would have never have been solved. Ever. Because technically, like, they only had this one teeny piece of information, this tiny piece of DNA, that then they somehow linked this guy who wasn't around. He was in South America when all this happened. So then they... or South Africa, where was it? Drawing a blank. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But then they found the parents, but then turns out that it was this guy who had been unfaithful to his wife and had made a baby with some woman. And just, it's so... like, this case was crazy, wasn't it? Am I the only one who thinks this? Like, it's just so interesting. I find these things so interesting. I don't know why. Just the fact that technology can help us in so many ways now, it's just mind-boggling to me. I don't know. She just had to go to her gym and she was just trying to work out and return a stereo. Like, that's so scary to me. Like, how can I Like, it feels like I could just walk outside to go give my friend something that I borrowed and get murdered. It makes me scared. It scares the living crap out of me. And I feel so very sorry for Yara and her family. And I only wish for them to find peace and tranquility finally after a few years of this, you know, having happened. And my deepest condolences, because I would be so frustrated. I would be sad, but more so just very angry. I feel like they would be really, really angry, because, like, she wasn't doing anything. She was just returning a stereo. And she died. She didn't die. Someone murdered her. And we know who murdered her, but he is saying that he didn't, and he's adamant about that. Just hope that he stays in jail forever, because that's what he deserves. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you would like more of these videos, just leave a comment below and let me know what case you would like to see next. Bye!